All right, 12:02 on a Monday, the same Monday in the week that the Wednesday is coming up, which is game one between the Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks. Looking forward to that. If you are listening on TuneIn, on iHeart, or at EdmontonSportsTalk.com, hopefully you enjoyed a small dose of Whale and the Wolf. And let's go. It is the Oil Stream. Dusty and Tommy Gazzola with you, brought to you by Boston Pizza. Fuel your fandom at Boston Pizza. Playoff menu now available. The halftime square footer, the flight of wings, the triple play platter, plus the new Chipotle chicken quesadillas. Fuel your fandom at all Boston Pizza locations for all of the National Hockey League playoffs. Oilers and Canucks. It is now set. Tommy Gazzola down at the rink today earlier. Now back in the home studios. Tommy, what's up, buddy?
Hello.
Hello.
I was just chomping on a sandwich, so I didn't want people to see and or hear that. But
how was the sandwich? How was the sandwich, Tommy?
It's like a ham Swiss BLT, and I was just telling Zach to come that I added a whole bunch of sauces to it. A little light ranch, some chipotle mayo, and honey mustard, and it's absolutely phenomenal.
Wow, that sounds real nice. None of that stuff I like. So that's good.
Why not? Ranch is awesome.
Well, I like ranch. Okay, so I like ranch. It's the mustard part that you lost me on.
Honey mustard is great.
Yeah, well, I'm very meh on honey mustard still. I don't hate it.
Like
I don't love it. No, I don't necessarily like blue cheese. I don't think.
Thank God.
I think I've dabbled in it once or twice.
It's gross. Jack Michaels loves blue cheese.
Must be an American thing, hey?
It's awful. Like, it tastes like ass. I'm just going to say it. It tastes like ass.
Wow. That's gross, I guess. Nielson and Gazzola with you. Oil Stream brought to you by Boston Pizza. Tommy, overall from the rink today, who's on the ice, who's not on the ice, what they work on?
A little bit of power play work, some regroups, just some flow stuff. And, two guys that weren't on the ice that are notable were Evander Kane and Adam Henrique. And listen, we know that Kane is dealing with his athletic pubalgia, a.k.a. sports hernia. And then Henrique a little bit nicked up. I was talking with DVD. We're going to have a Rick report coming up, and DVD thinks it was an ankle thing. So I know that they're talking to the players and Chris Knobloch right now. I had to skedaddle to hop on. So I wasn't around to get an update. But quite frankly, we might not even get an update from Chris Knobloch because it is that time of year where information like that doesn't really get spread around too much.
Yeah, that's one of the ones where it'll be like, oh, yeah, day to day, I'll see how it goes. So did DVD see something? Because I remember watching your postgame after Game 5. And I remember somebody in the postgame being like, hey, guys, you hear anything about Henrique? Looked like he was kind of out there at the end.
Yeah, he missed his last couple shifts or something like that. I assume that he would be okay by now, but maybe it's one last day of rest for those two before they rejoin the group tomorrow. I know Edmonton, they're flying out tomorrow, so maybe they get out there for a quick spin and they got the day off today. Brown and who was the other guy filling in? Brown and somebody and no, I can't remember, but it was the regular group. There were no like black aces skating with the group.
Okay, so just quickly, let's just he'll probably be back. But if Henrique can't go in Game 1, who slides up into that juicy spot? Do you think?
Well, I think they bump somebody up, probably Fogle.
Yeah,
or maybe they, maybe Kane goes up and then maybe Fogle gets a look.
Fogle's been the guy who's probably spent the most time in the top 6 outside of all those other guys, right?
Yeah. And I know Schauger was talking about it on the Got Your Back Morning Mandate on the Smash Hit Nielsen show this morning that people might want a little bit more from Fogle. I don't think he was bad in that series. I just think that his offensive contributions were muted a little bit, but there weren't really any players that were bad for the Oilers in that first round. Corey Perry had a rough game too. I think we acknowledged that, and he bounced back and was solid the rest of the way. And I know Shaggy was talking about the third line, but I thought for the most part every line was pretty solid. Would you want more 5-on-5 offense? Yeah, 100%. But I think we're forgetting two LA and its ability to shut teams down in the way it did all season long, 5-on-5 with that boring ass 1-3-1 that they ran. So I think, Fogle, I think he's been all right. So if he gets bumped back up, you slide Carrick or somebody in and away you go, or Connor Brown gets in, because I know he's been fired up and not too happy that he's been sitting. So they've got guys that are ready and waiting. Carrick and Ryan obviously rotating in the first round. So I think they'll be okay if one of those guys misses a game or two, but I anticipate that they should be good to go.
They've got NHL guys out of the lineup right now, so that is a positive for any team when it comes to a depth perspective. 780-218-9999, 780-218-9999, or you can hit us up in the nasty chat today as well. 780-218-9999 would be in the inbox. I see Michael says might be flying in to see the boys soon. Michael flying into the city for a little playoff action. Where you can swing on by EST headquarters here. I think that would be all right. B Mother Review says Holloway or Fogle. I think would be moved up in that situation. It would be one of those two guys, I would think, and then you filter somebody into the back. Brian Reed over on YouTube, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, I haven't even done it yet. Hammer that thumbs up for us. That'll go a long way, pushing out our content to others who are looking for similar content to you out here. Brian says Oilers are going to the series so freaking cold. And Vancouver got a little bit of rest time, doesn't need to travel. Vancouver scares me, man. Tommy, let's just start with, look, we will break down the goaltending. We'll break down the blue lines. We'll break down the special teams, break down the forwards. We'll break down the coaching as we work our way through the oil stream today to kind of set the series up. But let's just start there. That's obviously one of the first concerns. And for anybody, if you want to do chime in, 780-218-9999. Tommy, where are you at right now in the Oilers going so long without playing a game here? Vancouver coming in, getting a little bit of rest themselves, playing more recently. Does this factor in at all, in your opinion?
Probably like the first 10, 15 minutes of game one.
Just to get juices going again and stuff?
Yeah, so I'm not disregarding it at all, but overall, probably not a ton. I don't know. If the Oilers continue to show that they are maturing before our very eyes, then this should just benefit them. And they should, in theory, have jump out of the gate in game one. Yes, the Canucks played recently. I have seen people, I'm not going against what Brian said and texted us, but I have seen those who believe the opposite, that are like, oh, now the advantage is gone because the Canucks get so much rest. I think the opinions are varying, but ultimately, I don't think it's going to be a massive factor outside of maybe right out of the gates. And we know the Oilers have had a penchant for being slow out of the gate in games and did so earlier in the season and scattered throughout even when they were playing really well. But at the end of the day, no, not a huge factor in my opinion. But I understand the concern. I really do. We look at everything. That's the beauty of this. And until they drop the puck on Wednesday night, then we don't really know.
What do you think about the layoff here? 780-218-9999. You can chime in there over on YouTube as well. That's one of the aspects that we would look at in this series. I think I already recycled my pictures. I had the 10 most important players in this series, Tommy. I dropped those this morning around 7:45. And they are as follows in this series. Tell me who you move around. If I recall off the top of my head, I went McDavid, I went Draisaitl, I went whoever's in net for the Vancouver Canucks, I went Quinn Hughes, I went Stuart Skinner, I went JT Miller. Then after JT Miller, I went with Elias Pettersson trying to get something going. Then I went with Hyman and Kane, rounding out the top 10, Tommy, as far as the different levels of importance that players will play in this series if their teams are going to win it. What did you think of the list? Would you move anybody around on that list as far as levels of importance go?
Very good list, Dusty. Very good list.
Thanks, Tom. Proud of the list, Tom.
You're excellent at lists and drafts and organization, graphics, as I've learned. I thought I knew a lot about you, but you're very good at graphics as well. Beautiful graphic you put out last night. Your list
that one actually looked up pretty nice for the Comedy Fest, eh?
That's pro.
I put that together. I put that together in less than 20 minutes last night while I was watching
fantastic.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that.
The Comedy Festival people actually liked it too.
Did they?
Yeah, when I put it on Instagram.
Well, we are off and running.
Hey, now, Okay, your list though. The only one I would probably move up is JT Miller. I really like JT Miller. He is an asshole to play against. He is skilled. He plays big boy hockey, and I just think that he is going to be a huge factor in this series. He could be a thorn in the sides of McDavid and Draisaitl, but outside of him, if they don't have Elias Pettersson going and Brock Besser and some secondary help and support, then that's going to be troublesome for the Canucks. But I just think I'd put JT Miller up there. And the goaltending for the Canucks, good story. Arturs Shilov's what he was able to do and kind of, surpassing Casey DeSmith in the moment. And, I think Edmonton brings a lot more offensive prowess to the table than the Nashville Predators do. And I'm not knocking the Predators. It's just the fact of the matter is Nashville has one scoring line and the other lines are kind of third lines. I think, Cass and Belzy sort of similar thoughts on that. And I completely agree with them. So, that's a good list. I'll just put Miller higher up. That's it.
Yeah, I could see JT Miller sliding. Like, overall, Stuart Skinner, I think, has to be somewhere in there because if he plays poorly, they could be in a lot of trouble. You at least need steady goaltending from Stuart Skinner in this series. JT Miller or Quinn Hughes, then? Let's have that conversation. Who do you think is more important? Like, who playing well is more important to the Canucks' success?
You want to say Quinn Hughes, right? Because of how dominant he can be. But I think if you've got guys up front who aren't pulling their weight, then JT Miller, his presence and his importance is amplified. So I'll stick with JT Miller, but it's like, what's Matthias Ekholm compared to McDavid's McDavid, but like Matthias Ekholm is a key cog on defense. Obviously Quinn Hughes is the same. But I don't know. I'm just going to say that, like, if this Canucks team can't get anything from its forwards, then it's screwed. I fully expect Quinn Hughes to provide offense. I expect him to handle the punishment physically that Edmonton will probably try to impose like Nashville did and be fine because he's that elite. So I think that'll put more of an emphasis on the forwards and JT Miller. So I might be going against the grain a little bit. I know that, and I want to stir up the conversation a bit, but I just really do think that Miller is going to be just a force for the Oilers to have to deal with in this series.
Yeah, I don't see the Canucks using the same recipe they used to beat the Preds, thinking that that'll work against the Edmonton Oilers, right? They're going to need to have more offense provide. The Oilers are going to get goals. It's that simple. I mean, nothing against the 12 NHL games that Shilovs has played, but the Edmonton Oilers aren't losing a series because that guy stands on his head. Like, I just don't see that. I don't see that being the case here. Portions of the Oil Stream brought to you by Popeyes and the new crispy chicken buffalo wrap that is now available. 2 classic hand-battered and breaded mild chicken tenders, bold buffalo sauce paired with fresh lettuce, tomato, and milder spicy mayo wrapped in a soft flour tortilla. Available in-store or delivery. And they got the buffalo poutine that is now available at all of your Popeyes locations as well. The Oilers are heavy favorites from a betting perspective in this series. If you pop online over at CoolBet and hop in over there, we kind of talked about it a little bit this morning as well. But the Edmonton Oilers right now, by far the biggest favorite in the second round, minus 270 for them to win the series. Tommy, how do you view this? Are the Canucks, like, I think I saw Sportsnet at like 22 of the 23 guys and girls, analysts, whatever, broadcasters, I think 22 of 23, something around there, ended up picking the Oilers to win this series. It seems like for a first-place team, the Canucks are getting quite a bit of disrespect heading into this thing. Can you see why that is the case, and does it make that much sense?
I think Nashville in that series shows why they're getting such quote-unquote disrespect. I think it's more just a reality check. I mean, Vancouver, great season. No denying that. They were consistent right out of the gates all the way through to the last game of the season, and they did it with some injury issues. Demko was nicked up. He's still nicked up, obviously. But like Rick Tocchet got a lot out of this group all season long, and I don't think it's similar to how Daryl Sutter did it with Calgary and LA. I think Rick Tocchet has a bit more of a touch for his group where he doesn't, drain the battery of the team going and asking for 110% all day, every day. I think Rick Tocchet's a little bit more modern than that, obviously. But the fact that the Vancouver Canucks are not being picked as a favorite in this series doesn't surprise me. The lack of the playoff experience that we talked about going into that Nashville series. And then what happened? Well, they really weren't the better team in 3 or 4 of those games. They weren't. And they ended up winning a couple of them. And that's gutsy. That's good character. And that shows the perseverance paid off. So I'm not taking anything away from the Canucks and how they won that series, but the majority of those games, you could say Nashville should have won. The one where Vancouver got the 2 late goals, the one where they were heavily outshot and only pestered Saros with 12 shots and 24 pucks at the net. Like, they should not have won in those games. And that goes to the lack of offense that the Nashville Predators possess. So I think, the quote unquote lack of respect for the Vancouver Canucks is a little bit warranted, just given both teams' bodies of work in the postseason. Edmonton's got the experience. Edmonton cruised through LA, albeit it wasn't easy every night. And then Vancouver had a really tough go against the Nashville team that was really pesky and put together a strong final quarter of the year.
It is the Oil Stream. It is presented to you by Boston Pizza. Fuel your fandom with the playoff menu at BP's. You can text us at 780-218-9999, 780-218-9999. If you're watching on YouTube today, please hammer that thumbs up for us. And if you're listening on TuneIn or iHeart or EdmontonSportsTalk.com, tell your friends about what we are building here. If they're sports fans, we think they will really, really, really like it. The Liquid Beaver says, how do you think the Oilers approach this series? Patiently wait for chances like they did against LA, or push the pace with more offense? Tommy, I think it's a good question. Where do you come out on this one?
Yes, good question. Absolutely. I think that they try to force the pace. I don't like personally sitting back and waiting. I don't think that the Oilers like to sit back and wait. They kind of showed a little bit of versatility with how they handled LA, although they played them 3 years in a row. So they kind of know what the recipe for success is there. But I think Edmonton will want to dictate the pace of play. I think Edmonton will want to be in the offensive zone. I think Edmonton will want Vancouver to open it up, because I know Vancouver has a great transition game. I know that they have some weapons on the back end, and they certainly have forwards that can burn you. But at the end of the day, I think that favors the Edmonton Oilers. And then again, going into this matchup with Artur Shilovs and Stuart Skinner being your 2 goalies, that favors Edmonton. So I think Edmonton will be on attack mode, but there has to be a responsibility for their own zone. There has to be an awareness that there are a bunch of weapons that the Vancouver Canucks possess, but I don't think that they're going to be patient and sit and wait or try to draw Vancouver into the long game and get into this defensive shell. I think that they're going to attack and press and try to burst Vancouver's bubble in their zone.
Farhan Lalji, just a few seconds ago, same regular lines and pairings for the Canucks at practice at UBC, all present and accounted for, minus Thatcher Demko. So, you know what, Tommy, that kind of takes us in to sort of break down these different positions and where teams have advantages. And I think in any playoff series, you have to start between the pipes. And considering Thatcher Demko is banged up right now, Tommy, are we checking this box for Stuart Skinner and the Edmonton Oilers with an advantage in between the pipes?
Yep.
Have to, right? Like,
have to. How do you not?
Yeah, even with the banged up Demko, I think you'd still have to lean towards Skinner, not knowing what level of play Demko could possibly be at. So right now they're starting with Shilovs, who's barely played in the National Hockey League. Numbers prior to this series against Nashville have never really moved the needle. It's hard to believe it, but for the second series in a row here, the Edmonton Oilers have an advantage between the pipes, Tommy. You got to love that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't, you said something there, Dusty, that I'm just like, I know people feel this way about the Oilers goaltending. You said it's hard to believe the Oilers for a second straight series have the advantage in net. Why is that hard to believe? Like, Stuart Skinner is a good goalie. Stuart Skinner is at the end of his second full year in the National Hockey League. He's been a Calder finalist. He's been an all-star, albeit as a replacement. He's putting together a decent postseason so far. I think maybe the narrative around him will start to change if he continues to play well. There's going to be doubters regardless, but
I think I said hard to believe just because.
But Dusty,
like if Demko's healthy, I'm checking the box for Vancouver here.
Oh yeah,
right?
sure. Okay.
So they're getting fortunate here that they don't have to face Thatcher Demko, and because of that, they have the advantage between the pipes.
And I understand that. I'm not knocking you saying that, but
no, I understand.
It's also like I think we're going to get to a point if this continues with Stu Skinner where you go, oh, Stu Skinner versus Jake Ottinger, Stu Skinner versus Thatcher Demko, pretty even goaltending matchup. I think it's tracking that way. And he needs to put together a nice series or two and then continue to play well in the regular season. And I think that shadow of doubt will be cast away, if you will.
I think it's also hard to believe because when was the last time that happened? Like when was the last time the Oilers had an advantage in goaltending in one series, let alone two straight? And where do you have to go back to?
Maybe Cam Talbot against the Sharks but Martin Jones was putting up some really good
I was going to say you'd have to go back to opening series 2017.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you weren't given Talbot over Gibson. That was Gibson at the height of his game. He's obviously, struggled since, and the team has too in Anaheim. But yeah, maybe Martin Jones, Cam Talbot. You give Talbot the slight edge after a monster season. And then prior to that, you'd have to go back to 2006. You'd probably go Dwayne Rollison over Cam Ward. And then, we saw what happened in that series. Cam Ward, minimal experience, playing in the minors most of that year. Cam Ward, who was the goalie? J.S. Giguère Dwayne Rollison against J.S. Giguère in the third round. I think you're giving Giguère the nod there. Nabokov versus Rollison in the second round. I think Nabokov was pretty
Nabokov would have been pretty good back then.
And then was it Manny Legacy versus Rollison? I think you'd give it to Rollison.
Yeah, I give it to Rolly on that side.
One,
so I mean, we have to go back. So it's been a long time since we sat here. And it's funny because, like, depending on how it goes in a conference final, should they get past the Vancouver Canucks? I mean, Stuart Skinner versus Georgiev, I'd feel pretty good about that matchup for the Edmonton Oilers. And then even though Georgiev played really well against Winnipeg, and then Jake Ottinger's been really good lately, but you might say that's a saw-off by the time it's all said and done. Let's see how these series go first. So for this series, right now, Skinner and the Edmonton Oilers with an advantage between the pipes. Let's go on the blue line, Tommy. Quinn Hughes with Henrique, Soucy with Myers, Zadorov with Ian Cole. Obviously, Quinn Hughes has had a monstrous season. Bouchard has had an excellent offensive season himself as well. You got Ekholm and Nurse in the mix here. Is there an advantage one way or the other on the blue line, do you think?
I want to give Edmonton the benefit of the doubt on the third pair. With Kulak, who's just rock solid. You know what you're getting. Meat and potatoes, and he plays well in the postseason. And Desharnais, who had a very good series. Let's see if that continues. Maybe Vancouver tries to focus in on Desharnais and try to beat him with speed a little bit. That could be part of their strategy, I would think. But if Nurse and Ceci play steady, smart hockey, I think they're just fine. And I think that the blue lines stack up pretty good. I think they're relatively even. I want to give Edmonton the benefit of the doubt because of the third pair, but I don't know if I can. Very even.
I mean, we'll see how Quinn Hughes plays in this series, but can make a strong case he was the best defenseman in the league this year, right? So, I mean, might be a little bit of advantage that way. I do.
But like Ekholm
well, that's the thing. Like I think
one of the most unheralded guys in the league, and Bouchard had almost as good of an offensive season.
He had a great season too. So I think I'm going to saw it off. Like I don't think there's a significant advantage on the blue line one way or the other. You brought up the third pair. I mean, Quinn Hughes doing what he's done this season on the first pair. What about Soucy and Myers versus Nurse and Ceci? Where's the advantage going in that one?
I think it could go either way.
Yeah,
I really do, because Soucy and Myers, first of all, are giants.
They're two
especially
huge men.
Myers.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Nurse and Ceci are no slouches either. They're big boys. But can you find a way to solve Myers with speed? We've seen Tyler Myers struggle at times. There's some people that thought Tyler Myers was washed up as a member of the Canucks. And then Soucy's just solid. Like, Soucy's just a rock solid defenseman, big boy, good Alberta kid. I think he's from Irma. And so I when you saw it off and say it might be a wash, I'm with you on that, Dusty. If I'm going to give it, like, Philip Hronek has had a great year.
He has.
And he paired up with an excellent defenseman, one of the best, if not the best guy this year. But then you go, well, Bouchard and Ekholm, you're like, damn, that's a good pairing when Bouchard's engaged offensively, when Ekholm is healthy. Like, there's some factors. I think it's pretty even. So even me trying to stretch to say Edmonton's third pairing is better, it's a stretch.
Let's saw it off. Hey, we're going to saw it off?
Saw it off. Yeah.
All right. So Oilers have the advantage between the pipes. Blue lines, we view them as essentially even. Forwards, anytime you have McDavid and Draisaitl, you lean towards checking the box on that side for the Edmonton Oilers. But let's just take a look here at the Vancouver Canucks forward group and have this conversation. JT Miller between Besser and Puce Suter. Is that Puce? Anyway, Puce Suter. Pettersson with Mikheyev and Höglander, Lindholm, Garland, and Dakota Joshua, Teddy Bluger, Sam Lafferty, and Phil DiGiuseppe. I'd lean Oilers with the advantage here as well, even though that is a formidable group of forwards up front, especially if Pettersson can do something. If they can get Pettersson going in this series, they have to have it. If Pettersson plays the way he did against Nashville, Vancouver doesn't have a hope. They just don't. You're not going to beat the Oilers with Pettersson doing nothing like you managed to do against the Nashville Predators. I just don't see him.
Wild card guy to look out for, Dakota Joshua. I'll just say that there. And
I don't mind that third line, like Garland, Joshua, and Lindholm. I think the Canucks would gladly take that against the McLeod line, to be honest with you.
Yep. And then if you're looking at Elias Pettersson, however he pronounces his first name today, I think you're watching the tape from the Nashville series and going, what did Nashville do to Elias Pettersson to really limit his impact on the series, and trying to replicate that? And I think you have guys who can also do that from an Oilers standpoint. And then, you're going to need the third line to chip in a bit. The fourth line gave you a couple of contributions in the playoffs, which was great. Dylan Holloway, what a pleasant surprise. He needs to continue to do that. So Edmonton's four lines need to be firing. I would give a slight advantage to Edmonton on this one. Yep. McDavid and Draisaitl, they just tilt the advantage anytime. The scales always get tilted slightly towards Edmonton whenever you have just two beasts like that offensively continuing to be beasts in the postseason. It's incredible to watch them do their best work when the games matter most, and that is the playoffs. And I think that's a sign of the type of players and people that they are.
Jenna over in the Nasty Chat says, Giuseppe is just a hilarious name. I'll never take him seriously.
Oh, don't you besmirch it, Giuseppe. That was my grandpa's name.
Phil did Giuseppe.
And he went by Beppy.
That guy.
Yeah, that's a great name.
He went by Beppy Giuseppe?
Beppy. Well, his name was Giuseppe, but his nickname was Beppy.
That's great. So Giuseppe was his first name?
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Full
it.
name.
Giuseppe,
it's like
you're Beppy.
Thomas Tommy.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Giuseppe.
And this is his last name.
Yeah, if you translate it to English, it's Joe or Joseph.
All right, so the Oilers have the advantage between the pipes. The Oilers have the advantage up front. We're saying it's a wash on the blue line. Special teams. Vancouver's penalty kill, I think it was 90% of the series against Nashville, but it was middle of the pack. It was 79% in the regular season, Tommy. And the Oilers are coming in with this power play that's absolutely lights out, firing on all cylinders right now. The penalty kill's been perfect. Is there a case here to put Vancouver in this same conversation? Because I'm giving a check mark here to the Oilers special teams right now.
Yeah, check mark Oilers special teams. Vancouver's power play 15%. PK, great, 90%. Again, we look at Nashville and go, we don't have to really be scared of the Predators offensively outside of the top line, Nyquist, O'Reilly, and Forsberg, who are three excellent players. But I think this is a distinct advantage for Edmonton, especially going off of what both teams did in their first round series.
All right, and then we get to coaching. Rick Tocchet, Knobloch. Where's the separation here and what I think are two really good coaches?
Yeah, one guy with much more experience at the NHL level, and obviously Rick Tocchet as a player played for basically ever. Stanley Cup pedigree as a player, all-star, bruiser, kind of a jack of all trades. I'd probably give it to Rick Tocchet, not taking anything away from Chris Knoblauch, because what Chris Knoblauch is putting together in the NHL is very impressive, and he goes about his business quietly without much fanfare. I just on the surface, I would probably say this goes to Rick Tocchet, but I'm not discounting Chris Knoblauch and his strategy and composure and demeanor and how he communicates with his players at all.
No, but look, they're both excellent coaches. They've both done phenomenal jobs this year. I do think I'd slightly lean towards Tocchet just from an experience perspective, which is, I mean, that's fair. I think that's fair. So let's give a slight edge to Vancouver in the coaching. So you've got breaking down these categories, the Edmonton Oilers with an advantage between the pipes, the Edmonton Oilers with an advantage on special teams, the Edmonton Oilers with an advantage on the forwards, the Edmonton Oilers and Vancouver Canucks, a little bit of a saw-off on the blue line. Now, with that being said, I do love these discussions. This is why we do it with the comments and everything. I'd argue that the Canucks D is slightly better top to bottom. Very close matchup, but the Canucks third pair, I would take over Nurse and Ceci in a tough playoff matchup. More so Ceci. Nurse is usually okay. He says third pair. And Zadorov's very interesting. Like, we had Canucks fans sliding into the old nasty chat on the Nielson show this morning talking about Zadorov and how he's going to be a nightmare for McDavid. I'm like, if the Canucks want to match up Zadorov and Ian Cole against the Connor McDavid line, the Edmonton Oilers aren't going to be trying to get away from that, Tommy. They're gonna let that run all day long, are they not?
Are we forgetting that the Oilers handled Zadorov neat and tidy in
against
5 games?
Against the Calgary series, yes.
Against the Flames 2 springs ago? We're forgetting this, aren't we?
I don't know how you could forget. I don't know how you could forget that. Like, it's pretty big factor, and you look at the history of the
blinders,
the two teams. Like, so yeah. So we had the blue line as a slough, and then a slight advantage in coaching for Rick Tocchet. So I mean, as we break down these categories, I think you see why it's kind of become pretty apparent that the Edmonton Oilers are favored in this series. Advantage between the pipes, better special teams. Let's just start there. I mean, that's usually what playoff series come down to. Just special teams and goaltending. And they've got the advantage in both of those areas right now. Then you throw in McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman and Nuge and what Kane's done so far in the playoffs. And I think you have to be pretty happy on that one. Sean says Ian Cole is a vet. He is a vet. He's had success. Who knows how to play in the playoffs too. Also, not saying that I want the Canucks third pair to match up against McDavid. He's just saying he would take. So he said he'd take the third pair over Nurse and Ceci. So I'm assuming he said he'd take the third pair over Kulak and Desharnais, I guess, as well. So, I mean, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, choose the blue line, I think I would lean slightly towards Vancouver, but I think it's too much of a saw-off right now. And that is only if Quinn Hughes plays better than he played in the Nashville series. Because, I mean, he's one of those guys. He's one of those guys that I think can dictate a game more so than 97% of defensemen in the National Hockey League. Like,
that's a fair point.
Yeah, even Bouchard. Like, I think Hughes can have a bigger impact on a game by himself than Bouchard could have by himself, right, Tommy? Is that
Bouchard's like a great complementary piece,
like an amazing complementary offensive piece? Yeah.
Whereas Hughes is a driver, right? I think that's an assessment most of us would probably agree with, and that's a huge factor. If you have a guy driving like that, he's your engine from the back end, and then you got some weapons up front. Bouchard is phenomenal offensively, but not like Hughes. It's different.
780-218-9999, 780-218-9999. Waddy in Cloverdale says, Dusty, the media here has Lindholm as the second line and matching up with Draisaitl's. They expect Pettersson up against McLeod. That comes from Waddy in Cloverdale. Your thoughts on that matchup? If Vancouver, well, they're going to be at home to start this series. They should be able to get the majority of the matchups they want. Would you at all be worried, Tommy? Which, I mean, from a Vancouver perspective, it would make sense. You'd rather have Lindholm with more defensive abilities out there against Draisaitl, throw JT Miller out against Connor McDavid, and then you try to get Elias Pettersson in some interesting spots. So if that is, it would be the Ryan McLeod line against Pettersson, Mikheyev, and Höglander. How do you think that holds up? Could that be an interesting developing lineup matchup in this series?
Maybe, but off the top of my head, I'd be like, ooh, Ryan McLeod's got some work to do. But if we see Elias Pettersson play the way Elias Pettersson has been in the playoffs, even though it's a big ask of Ryan McLeod, I would want to have faith in him to be able to be responsible and handle that assignment as best as possible, especially on the road where you don't get the last change and Rick Tocchet can kind of dictate those matchups, obviously, a little bit more. So I like the challenge that would be before Ryan McLeod and his line. I'm curious to see if that matchup comes to fruition, how they handle it. And then I think just the biggest question mark in that scenario would be what Elias Pettersson shows up and how does he perform and how does he, quote unquote, take advantage of lesser centerman in Ryan McLeod. Don't get me wrong. Ryan McLeod's faster than Elias Pettersson. I think Ryan McLeod could be a buzzsaw and absolutely pester that entire line, including Elias Pettersson. So if you're asking Ryan McLeod to take on more defensive responsibility, shut down Pettersson, I like his chances of doing a pretty good job, at least for the games in Vancouver.
Let's get to a few more of your text messages. 780-218-9999. If you are listening on TuneIn or on iHeart or at edmontonsportstalk.com, please tell your friends how easy it is to just stream our online station. If you're watching over on YouTube, let's hammer that thumbs up. 55 likes. What is this? Come on.
Let's go.
Come on. Let's go. Crank that thing up. We're at 100 here by the end of the show. Let's go. I need 45 more. There's well over 200 of you watching right now. So hammer the thumbs up if you don't mind. If you think the Oilers are going to win this series, give us a like over on that front. All right. So this text comes in and says, defense in Vancouver is better only because of what Hughes can do. I'd say the next 5 are a saw-off. So that guy would give a slight advantage to Hughes over Bouchard, which I totally get. I mean, the guy's going to win the Norris Trophy this year. And then, after that, he says the other 5 are a saw-off. And that's why we view it as close. And I say if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say slight advantage on the blue line to Vancouver. Tube Socks texts in and says, discuss the intangibles, you cowards. Tommy, where do we come out on the intangibles of these two clubs?
Well, with Steven, a.k.a. Tube Socks, the intangibles could be anything. It could be pregame meal. It could be their sleep patterns. It could be the pillow type in the hotel rooms. So Steven is very intricate, meticulous, and detail-oriented. So define the intangibles, Steven. I will put that back in your court.
Yeah, we'd like to know exactly what you're thinking. I'm just like the overall sort of, let's see, the overall vibe here. Like the Edmonton Oilers have been close, but have failed, got it there against Colorado, couldn't get the job. Like they've seemed to be pushing further more. So can they build on what they've already learned as a group compared to the Vancouver Canucks? Possibly. The Vancouver Canucks, though, are a team that people have wanted to count out the entire season, and they just continue to hang on. They heading into the season, not a lot of people had the Canucks even in the playoffs, and they end up hanging on to top spot in the division. They lose Thatcher Demko. Well, when they lose Thatcher Demko, that's going to be it. They're not going to be able to hang on to top spot in the division. They hang on to top spot in the division. Then you get in this series against Nashville. You lose Demko. You're playing Shilovs, who I think prior to this series had like 9 career NHL games. Oh, well, Nashville's going to come back. I said it. I thought Nashville was going to come back in that series, but they didn't. Vancouver got it done again. So, Tommy, as a group, I mean, just this season alone and what they've done under Rick Tocchet, I mean, Vancouver's got something to build on there too, I think.
Yeah, and they've had they built their own good fortune too. Like they hustle, they deserve it, but let's not kid ourselves. They've gotten lucky, Dusty, and I'm not putting their season on luck. I'm not. But who would have had the Vegas Golden Knights imploding in the regular season the way they did? Who would have had Edmonton stumbling out of the gates, scraping both knees and chipping a tooth out of the gates to start the season? Calgary, a total non-factor. LA was pretty damn good for a while and then fell off. And Vancouver was just steady Eddie the entire year and took advantage. And they they deserve the credit that they are getting. But, I think a little bit of luck goes a long way for them, and they've tapped into that. And again, I'm not knocking them, but if they run out of luck in this series, then they're probably in trouble.
What do you think? 780-218-9999. Eden is in to the inbox and says, hey, boys, I think a big part of shutting down Hughes is whether the Oilers can get to him. McLeod faced off against PLD last series at times and came out fine. Pettersson and Mikheyev are struggling in the same way as PLD. I mean, I don't know if I put anybody in the Pierre-Luc Dubois stratosphere as far as having a non-impact. But, I mean, interesting point there. And if the McLeod line can come out even against the Pettersson line, if that is indeed the matchup that ends up happening, then that would go a pretty long way, I would think.
PLD, woof.
Let's see here.
That's all I'm saying there.
I want to get to where is the message? It was in the nasty chat. Maybe it was a little bit further up. Maybe it was in the text. Who knows? The X factor in this series, Tommy. Who becomes the X factor in this series? If you look at all the players, and you know how we always talk about X factors, who's the X factor in this series?
I'll stick with Dakota Joshua for the Canucks. For the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Club, I'll go with Evander Kane.
Okay.
Because I think he's going to be pretty fired up to be playing against his hometown team. I know his health is going to be an issue, not practicing today, all of that. Evander Kane, I'll go with. So Dakota Joshua for the Canucks, Evander Kane for the Oilers. What are you thinking?
Well, I hadn't even thought about it for the Canucks, really. But, I mean, I think we've only mentioned his name once in this entire series preview so far. But he lit up the Los Angeles Kings, and Zach Hyman. Like, we sit here and talk about McDavid and what was he, number 9 on my list of important players? He could lead the entire series in goals again. Like, it's just, I'm sure if you look at a lot of these series previews from a national perspective, there'll be a lot of McDavid and Draisaitl talk, and there'll be a lot of JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, and look what's happening between the pipes, and Quinn Hughes and Bouchard offensively. And once again, I mean, even though the dude scored 50 plus this year and had 7 in the first round, it's just like, and then there's Zach Hyman too. So, I mean, I could see Zach Hyman. It's kind of like Besser a bit on the other side. I could see Besser scoring 4 or 5 goals in this series.
Yep.
And I could
he scored huge goals in that series.
And I could see Zach Hyman scoring, 6 goals again in this series. I mean, that's what he does. He knows where to go when he's out there on the ice with Connor McDavid to score goals. So, Jeep is in and says X factor in this series would be Lindholm for Vancouver. And the way you can talk yourself into that is if Lindholm can go head-to-head with Leon Draisaitl and contain him 5-on-5, Tommy, that will go a long way for the Vancouver Canucks. Like, I can see why you would make that suggestion. So
now, like, Lindholm obviously has a ton of experience against Edmonton, played in a playoff series against Edmonton. But if I recall correctly, Michael Backlund was the guy that generally got McDavid or Draisaitl and or both during those games and in that series. I think I'm remembering that.
No, I think you're remembering it correctly. I mean,
yeah.
And
then if they deviated from that and put Lindholm up against McDavid or Draisaitl. McDavid, if you go back and watch his highlights from that series, like, he was ridiculous. Like, the stuff he was doing when he had the puck in the offensive zone was insane. And then Draisaitl was just Draisaitl. They had their way with the Flames in that series. So advantage Connor and Leon over Lindholm every day of the week, all day, every day, 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. End of story.
780-218-9999 is where you can get in on this one. We did have a poll going a little bit later or earlier on the show today. Guys, how many games did the Oilers and Canucks series go? 57% of the votes said 6. 24% of the votes said 5. 11% of the votes said 4. And then 6% of the vote said it would go 7. So the majority here thinking this ends in a 5 or 6 game series. Tommy, I don't know, on the Hangout today, when you're back on the Hangout here this week, you're going to have to give the gears to Matty Iwanek, who says he's not making a prediction. He's not making a prediction in this
I'm not
series.
surprised.
I mean,
I was watching, but I didn't catch that part of it.
Yeah, he said
I'm not. He avoids it. Like, he hates predictions. Matty is very staunch in his ways. and he hates predictions. So I'm not at all surprised. That's Matthew, and he has 17 different teams that he thinks he's on in various different sports across the globe, and he will not make a prediction at the same time.
Yeah, this is weird for the guy who in Vegas said if the Oilers beat Vegas, they're going to easily win the Stanley Cup. Now he doesn't. No, it doesn't matter, Matt.
Oh,
it doesn't matter. Matty's walking around chirping out there. Like,
yeah, he's probably got a big.
It wasn't after Vegas. That was in Vegas. Yeah, but so do you think Dallas then easily wins the Stanley Cup? Because they're the ones who took out Vegas. Oh my God, this guy.
I know.
The mental thing of getting past Vegas. I just, you're killing me, man. Just make a prediction. So this guy, after the hangout today, he's sitting there talking about the series. I'm just like, well, if you don't want to predict the Oilers, then say the Vancouver Canucks are going to win. He's like,
go for it.
But he's like, nope. I said, well, then say the Oilers are going to win. Like,
yeah. Is he walking around our studios with the Dutch Masters?
No, he's just standing outside here trying to defend himself.
Yeah. His ears are probably burning because he knows we're chirping him.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. So yeah, we'll see. Crackerjack says, Dusty, I heard a peep on Hello Hockey that you'll be doing the WHL final. Did you guys had Guy Flaming on Hello Hockey this weekend, didn't you?
We had Guy Flaming. Yeah, Guy was great. We went around the CHL, focused obviously on the WHL. Bukowski stopped by. Pagnato was great, predicting that Sheldon Keefe will probably be done. They might trade Mitch Marner, yada yada. Go watch the episode; it was fantastic. But yes, I might have let it slip that you.
I don't think anybody has followed the Canadian Hockey League closer in this country from a media perspective than Guy Flaming over the last 20 years.
He's great.
It's insane.
He was awesome.
It is absolutely insane. And yes.
And that's why he's a friend of EST.
Yeah, we love Guy.
You can catch a show on here twice a week.
Bingo. Pipeline show right here on Edmonton Sports Talk. And yes, I will be calling the WHL final. TSN has the rights for that. So it was quick. Like they asked me last Friday. They're like, "Can you call this series start next Friday?" And it's tough because I don't want to be away from family. I don't want to be away. Like I'm going to try to hop in as many shows as I can from the road. Yeah. But I never say no. I've never said no. I always take every opportunity. But this one was tough because I was like, man, Oilers are in the second round. Marshall's got spring hockey.
We've got the launch of Birdie Juice. I'm going to miss the damn
Birdie Juice launch, which absolutely kills me. So get out and support the boys.
Yeah. I'll be drinking for two.
You better be. You better be. And look, with that being said, I mean, first of all, anytime I have a chance to do play-by-play, I like to do it. But this series should be amazing, this WHL final, because Portland and Prince George, 3-2 Portland leads there. And the other one, it's been nuts. The Blades and the Warriors are going to Game 7. 5 of the first 6 games of that series have gone to overtime. It's nuts. I think in Game 5, the Blades had like a 4-0 lead, blew it, and then won in overtime 5-4. So it's been 2 great series. So I'm very much looking forward to going and doing this. But it sucks to be gone. So I'm going to try to maybe do some morning shows from the road, pop in when I can on other shows with travel and whatever. But no, cool opportunity. I never say no to anything. So it's just tough. This is tough timing. It's tough.
And we've got Elks rookie camp starting tomorrow or the day after. I got the email from the PR team.
Yeah, that's coming up right away too.
I'm like, oh my God, we're going to be at the stadium right away. When is that going to it's coming up quick. We've got an Elks game later this month.
Yeah, I know.
Hello.
Yeah. CFL preseason not far away as well. So busy times for sure. We will have the EST watch party for Game 1. Wednesday night, Tommy will be at Bourbon Street at Hudson's for the GCL Diesel pre- and post-game shows right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, and the whole EST crew will be out for Game. We didn't have to convince Eric because that's wing night. He's probably going to be there anyway. You don't have to convince any of us to roll in. You'll have a fat stack of GCs you'll be dishing out.
Yeah.
So make sure to join us. We will be there for the.
I'm down.
Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
I'm down just so I don't get chirped, because I do get chirped.
Okay.
Because people like to say I give the ladies the 20s and guys the 10s. I've been very even with my distribution of the GCs.
Good.
I'm almost out of 20s, so there's going to be a lot of 10s before I get resupplied. just to forewarn people so I don't get people attacking me for only having 10s.
Wednesday night, GCL Diesel pre- and post-game show, Bourbon Street, West Edmonton Mall, Hudson's EST crew will be out in full force. We would love for you to join us over there. Seventh Best Gord texts in today and says, hey guys, would love your take on Marner equating Leafs players to gods in Toronto. That was one of his quotes from today. He said they're like gods in Toronto. I mean, Tommy, if you gave some truth serum to McDavid and Draisaitl, I think they'd probably see themselves as gods in this market too. I mean, it's how you're treated.
They get treated. I mean, a guy like Sam Carrick is probably, high stepping down Jasper Avenue because he gets treated so good around here. You become an Oiler, a Flame, a Canuck, a Sen
Maple Leaf.
kind of, Maple Leaf, certainly kind of. Canadian, a Jet. Like you want to talk about stratosphere that you're thrust into? Absolutely. And then obviously in Toronto, it is, amplified, take what you get here in Edmonton, multiply it by about 3 or 4. And yes, they get treated like gods.
You just don't see players admit that very often, right? Like, but it's the truth. It's the truth.
I think they're just, you've heard the Maple Leafs and the players dropping swears in their interviews and they're fed up and I think they're at wit's end and they just say it how they see it now. And part of him saying that, maybe he'll regret it, but it is true. They get treated like gods. And he's a Toronto kid. And you know what that might also indicate too, Dusty, is his time there is running low.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, he's a UFA at the end of next season. So whether they trade him or not, he can go wherever the hell he wants at the end of next season. They get nothing for him. So it'd be very fascinating to see. We'll see Leafs management. We'll talk a little bit later on in the week, and we'll see if they decide to clean house with Sheldon Keefe. We will have more time to jump in even further on Game 1. It'll be game day next time we are doing the oil stream. So as for a series prediction goes, Tommy, I said it before the Kings series was even over. Oilers in 6 against the Vancouver Canucks. I don't see this thing getting to 7. I very much could be proven wrong, but I see it as a split in games 1 and 2. The Oilers taking 3 and 4 at home. The Canucks win in game 5, and the Oilers finishing it off in 6. What is your official prediction for this series?
I'll go Edmonton in 6 as well. I had Edmonton in 5 in round 1.
Yeah, we did.
So.
Try to go 2 for 2.
I'll try to go 2 for 2. I think Vancouver is going to put up a really good fight. I think there's something about the Oilers that brings out a fighting spirit in the Canucks, and I think we're going to see that. But I do think Edmonton ultimately, with its experience, its skill, should be able to prevail in 6 here.
One of the things that Drager said on our show this morning, we will use and kind of carry over into that Game 1 preview on Wednesday's Oil Stream, and maybe on Two Guys and a Goalie in the noon hour a little bit tomorrow as well. He said he thinks this is going to get ugly early, like physically ugly early.
Right.
Like there'll be a lot of hate early in this series. So we'll kind of set that up as we continue to get ready for the Oilers and the Vancouver. How about this? Oilers and Canucks in the second round of the playoffs, man. You can't get any better than this. This is great.
We've waited 32 years for this. I was 6 the last time this happened. 6, I think. Edmonton did beat the Canucks in 3 back in 86 and in 6 in 92. So there's your history lesson on the Oilers Canucks in the postseason.
All right, that is going to do it for the Oil Stream today, brought to you in part by our great partners over at Coolbet, and of course the new crispy buffalo chicken wrap at Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. All of those locations. Tommy Gazzola is still eating his lunch, and of course our presenting sponsor, Boston Pizza. If you have not yet checked it, I know many of you have. I mean, everybody loves Boston Pizza, but the playoff menu is now available, featuring the halftime square footer, the flight of wings, the triple play platter, and the new Chipotle chicken quesadilla. Fuel your fandom at Boston Pizza. Tommy, you enjoy the rest of your lunch, and I'll talk to you tomorrow, buddy.
Thanks, Dusty. See you tomorrow.